Hello lovelies, thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I know I haven't uploaded in a while, which if you keep up with my blog, most of you don't, but if you keep up with my blog or any of my social media, I have been forced to take a hiatus from a lot of social media in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and I'm going to be explaining why that is in this video. Couple disclaimers. This is how videos are going to look like for a while, because I'm still not in a situation where I can make even the most basically edited videos, like in the early parts of my channel. So this is how the videos are going to look for a while. As a result, this is probably going to be the only time in my life that I ever upload a video on a daily basis, because these are not going to be highly edited. They're not going to be, honestly, with these videos, what is said in them is a lot more important than how they look or how fancy the editing is. So, there's that. The subject of the videos is also going to change. Yes, my channel is branded as an AuthorTube channel and a BookTube channel, and a channel where I talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and sometimes I talk about art. But for the foreseeable future, this is going to act more as a vlog, as a conversation about mental health and stress and struggle and self-care, and that's what's going to be focused on for the near future. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about my writing somewhat, because in a way, my writing, while it's my job, is my stress relief. It's my, it's my way to relax, as is Dungeons and Dragons, as is drawing, as is just hanging out with friends in my writing group. But it's not going to be the main focus, so keep that in mind. I think that's all the disclaimers that need to be spoken of. So the videos are also probably going to be a lot longer than they usually are, because I'm working with my flipped video, which can film up to 2 hours of content. And I'm basically just going to let it run free and just talk to you guys about how I am feeling for the day. Basically, this is becoming a video diary. So with that, I think we can get started with today's subject, which, let's address the elephant in the room. I am in a different filming location, and that is because I moved. I moved out of my mother's home, kind of. A lot of my stuff is still there, because the place that I'm in is small, but for all intents and purposes, I moved out. I am sleeping here, is basically the point. As to the reason why, we need to go back a couple months ago. We need to go back specifically to October. Well, technically we need to go back to July. Back in July of 2019, we found out that I have a grandfather who I've talked a little bit about in some of my videos, but the gist is that he is 96 years old, and up until October of this last year, he was living with a girlfriend of 15 years. After my grandmother passed away, a year later he met this woman and moved in with her down in Arizona. They've been together ever since. She got terribly sick in July, and it was not looking good. She lasted a little bit longer than everybody expected. She was in hospice for a month, and ultimately she passed away in August. Where they were living, she owned the condo. She had full ownership of the condo, and in her will she left it to the daughters of a man that she was in a previous relationship with. I don't believe they were her daughters biologically. It's a bit of a messy situation. But they are the ones who inherited the condo. And rather than allowing my grandfather to live there for as long as he needed to, they wanted to sell the condo quickly. Specifically because the daughters who inherited it, their father, who was my grandfather's girlfriend's son, needed the money quickly because he wants to start a business in the Philippines. You can speculate from there. I know I've had my suspicions, but, we don't know what it specifically was for. He ended up dying a month after she died, but that's another story. So the gist is my grandfather was going to have to move out. He was going to have to move out quickly. And the prognosis was he could not be living alone. He's 96, and he's very fit for a 96-year-old, but he was 96. He needed some kind of care, and he was not very keen on assisted living. So my mom and I decided to move him in with us. Well, let me be honest. My mother decided that he was going to move in with us. Meanwhile, my mother and I were in the middle of trying to move because, we were kind of done with the town that we were in. But of course, nothing goes the way it's planned. So in October, my grandfather finally moves in, and my grandfather's girlfriend's family, they do whatever they want with the condo. We don't really talk to them anymore. When my grandfather moves in, my mom continues to work full-time, and because I'm unemployed but looking for work, I basically act as the live-in caregiver. 5 days after my grandfather moved in with us, he fell in the bathroom because the house that my mom is currently living in, which we've lived in for the last 6 years, it's not built for people who are not as physically able. It's not built for people like my grandfather. The shower in the master bathroom is a stand-up shower. He can't really stand up for long periods of time, and he fell over. After a week and a half of refusing to go to the doctor, we finally convinced him to go. We went to the bone and joint doctor specifically, where through an x-ray we found out he had cracked his hip. Fortunately, it was not bad enough of an injury to require surgery. All it truly required was 2 months of bi-weekly physical therapy at their physical therapy place, and, constant supervision on mine and my mother's end. Again, my mother continued to work. I acted as the full-time caregiver. So 2 months go by, and my grandfather heals up very nicely. 90% of the way healed is the way the doctor described it. Physical therapy did wonders. By this time, my mother and I were a little bit tired of living with my grandfather for various reasons. He can be a little picky with his food. He will complain about certain things, and his other thing that he was an architect when he was, in his working days. So he'll see little things around the house and go, well, I can make that better, and he'll try to fix them. He has cleaned our basement. He has cleaned our garage. He has, done various odd jobs around the house, and it's, we tried to tell him to stop because, he could hurt himself. He doesn't listen. And that's how we reached the next part of the story. In February, only a month after he had finished physical therapy for the cracked hip, my grandfather wanted to put hooks up in our garage so that we could organize our lawn equipment. Fine. We had tried to tell him we didn't need it. We had tried to do it for him. The way we did wasn't good enough because his way is the right way. You know how it is. Ultimately, a ladder fell on top of him, and he ended up falling backwards and full on breaking his femur right up near his hip. This resulted in a trip to the ER, obviously. And For a brief moment, it was not even, the doctors weren't even sure that the surgery for that broken femur could be done here. For a long time, for about 2 hours, they were like, we need to figure out if it can actually be done here or if he needs to be transferred somewhere else. Finally, they determined, yes, we can do it here. That his age scares doctors, especially when anesthesia is involved. He's 96. Fair enough. Anyway, they determine he can stay here and the surgery can be done. The surgery gets done the next day. He's in the hospital for a week because, he was dealing with some blood loss at the surgery site, so they had to do some blood transfusions. That was fine. But by the end of the week, they discharged him. And it wasn't as simple as they could discharge him to us and we could take him home. It was a broken femur. It required 6 to 8 weeks of physical therapy, specifically at a clinic where you live and work with the physical therapist. In this particular case, it was a nursing home. There is only one nursing home in our town that does work like this. And he did not want to go out of town. He wanted to be nearby us. Fine, okay. So we get him discharged to this nursing home in town. I'm not going to say the name of the clinic because I don't want a lawsuit on my hands. But at best, they're understaffed, and at worst, they're neglectful. Within 48 hours of being discharged to this clinic, my grandfather had fallen out of bed and had actually had like a nasty scrape on the back of his head when he fell. Did they take him to the doctor to be checked up? No. The nurses said, well, he doesn't have a concussion. We checked him. He's fine. But that was a giant red flag to me and my mother, and we said, he cannot stay here. So we go and tour a clinic in the next town over. The first people who had actually said we would be willing to take him. And we go there, and it's like night and day. It's a much better clinic. We feel that he would be safer there. We feel that he would be more comfortable there. We love it. He needed convincing. Specifically, he needed 3 weeks of convincing, and the only reason why we ended up convincing him was because on another particularly bad day at the in-town clinic, he just said, get it arranged. So within a week, he was transferred to the next town over. My mom and I went there, we got him set up in his room, and we were planning on visiting every single week. That was in mid-March. And a week later, COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic, and the nursing home that we transferred my grandfather to said, we cannot allow visitors into the clinic. It's not safe for them. So we can't go and visit him. We can keep calling him. Fortunately, he had a phone in his room, and my mother called him every single day to make sure he was okay. And for a long time he was doing great. During that time, my mother and I became very comfortable with going back to the way that things kind of were, where it was just me and her. And then around the 8th week that my grandfather was basically in his situation of rehab, 8th week, it should have been the last week, my mother started noticing behavioral and cognitive issues while talking with him on the phone. He wasn't making sense. He was kind of slurring his words. He would get weirdly agitated over things that never usually bothered him, etc., etc. Automatically, red flags, sirens start going off in everybody's heads. So my mom contacts the nurses there, they tell the doctors, and the doctors start running tests. Specifically, they're looking for infections because that's what they initially thought it was. All of the tests come back completely clean. The last test that needs to be done is a CT scan, which is done at the hospital in the next town, in the town that this, yeah. So they do the CT scan and they find 2 subdural hematomas that are quite large on either side of my grandfather's head. They try the least invasive way to get rid of those, which is like putting some drains in, but those aren't going fast enough. And the doctor says, if we don't do the big surgery, he could start having seizures, he could become a vegetable, and he could die. My mom was trying to do the right thing, and she said, go ahead with the surgery with the understanding that should he need resuscitation, to not give it. Turns out it was one of the easiest surgeries the doctor there ever had to do. So my grandfather is going to be, for all intents and purposes, fine. And he is discharged to a 3rd rehab facility which specializes in rehab from neurosurgery. And this is a rehab center that is not meant for longevity of staying. He is there for basically a week before we get a call from them and they say he would do much better at home. We're sending him back to you in a week. We managed to buy time and have it be, a week and 5 days before we went and got him. But the issue is that when they released him to us, they said he requires 24/7 constant supervision. If he gets up, you get up and you have to assist him. If he gets up in the middle of the night, you have to get up and assist him. All of these things. And there's pretty much a guarantee that he will never get back to where he was before he broke his femur, before he cracked his hip, before the subdural hematoma surgery. He's never going to be completely there in the head or completely there physically the way that he was. And this is when I had to start making the call to move out. I did not get a choice in this situation. When my mother decided that my grandfather would move in, we thought he wasn't going to need as much care and supervision as he ended up needing. Because my grandfather is super fit for 96. Even now, he's great. But it's not what I signed up to do, and I've had to put my life on hold for this whole situation. I've been looking for jobs. None have panned out. The job market where I am was shit before the COVID situation even happened. So I've been stuck in this situation essentially against my will since October. And I just got to a breaking point where I said I have to put some distance between this situation with my grandfather and myself. Otherwise, I don't want to say this because people are going to say that I'm being over dramatic and I'm attention seeking, but I have to tell the truth. I was clinging to the will to live by my fingernails. Everything was just going so wrong in life. I've been unemployed for a year and a month now. And I've been trying my best. I have applied for every single job I reasonably could, qualify for that I'm not going to absolutely hate, because I'm sorry, I deserve to be happy at this point. And nothing is working out. And I had to put some distance. I had to stop living in that situation 24/7. And maybe I'm a bad person for that, but fuck it. I'm a bad person. Because I needed to say, I can't do this anymore. I just need some distance. I just need to not be living and sleeping and breathing and eating in this 24/7. So I moved out. And I moved to this apartment. It was a perfect situation because a friend of mine had signed a year-long lease with this place. In the middle of that lease, she got married. She was still paying the rent because she didn't want, a problem with the landlord, but she was looking for someone to take over the lease. So I'm only obligated to this place for 2 months, unless I want to re-sign up come August. I don't know if I will. It depends on a couple things. I'm still unemployed, and I'm paying for this place by dipping into an emergency fund that I have. Basically, my full-time job is I'm going to my mom's house every day to help take care of my grandfather. And yes, I know I've been told 1,000 times you can get paid as a live-in caregiver by the insurance company. I've tried. I've called them. They do not pay you as a live-in caregiver. Specifically, his insurance doesn't. I don't know why. Don't ask me. I spent, 2 hours calling several people saying, we don't do that, call these people. We don't do that, call these people. We don't do that, call these people. I wasted 2 hours of a day trying to figure out if that was possible for me. And it isn't. So every day, for more than 8 hours sometimes, I'm there so that my mom can continue to work. Because the fact of the matter is, she is the only source of health insurance, not just for herself, but for me. Now, I'm going to lose health insurance come July because I turned 26, but my mom still needs health insurance, and she will not be in a place where she can quit her job until she reaches retirement age this December. That's another 6.5 months away. So I moved out just so I could not be in that situation 100%, and I could try to just get myself right. I really don't know what else to say. I hate that I had to make this choice. It's not the choice I wanted to make, but I had to. Anyway, hang on, I gotta grab a tissue. Proof that this is completely unedited. And even though I have put some distance between myself and this situation, I'm not living in that situation. I'm not spending 24/7 in it. I'm only spending 8 hours a day, 7 days a week in it. But I'm getting frustrated nevertheless. Because I'm tired of doing this. I didn't get this choice. I didn't get the opportunity to choose this. Somebody just decided that it was going to happen. And I had to take on a burden that I honestly never should have had to take on. And I have reached that point where now I'm not upset, I'm not angry, I'm just indifferent. I know that's difficult to believe given the circumstances, but the way that my indifference shows up is that anytime someone tells me that you have to care, you have to care about the situation, I just say I don't, and they keep telling me I have to care, and it gets frustrating that I have to keep caring. When I reach the point of indifference, I'm 1,001% done. You cannot tell me just hang on for a week, hang on for a day, hang on for another 5 minutes. I'm done. I want nothing more to do with this situation. And the problem is that I can't just do that with this situation. Because I'm not the only one involved. There will be massive collateral. My mom can't do this by herself. She just can't. And we both can't say we can't care for him. And we want to look into assisted living for him, but the problem is, as of right now, we don't know if anybody will take him. Because he needs too much assistance for the facilities that are here. The only place that would likely take him, as he is now, is that first rehab clinic we took him to that is either neglectful or understaffed. And we're not going to take him back there. We're not going to put him through that again. They will kill him. They will flat out kill him. I came to a realization today, which I guess I want to share. Throughout this whole process, especially since my grandfather came back, I have been in my head, in my heart, putting blame on my family specifically for putting me in this situation. And I have written an entire narrative why every single member of my family is to blame. Even people who are not here and who did nothing to put any of us in this situation. And my logical brain understands this is no one's fault. No one could have predicted that any of this was going to happen. None of us really could have done anything to stop it. Some of us could have made different choices, but ultimately we thought we were doing the right thing. And my logical brain understands that. But that fact doesn't make my heart feel better. And that's because when I sell the narrative that someone can be blamed for this, I'm not trying to sell the narrative that I'm the victim. At least that's not what I'm consciously doing. Maybe it's subconscious. I'm willing to accept that. But what I do sell the narrative of is this could have been prevented, it could have been stopped at any time, or it could have been predicted. And therefore, if I do or don't do X, Y, and Z, in this case, avoid the people who I think are to blame, then I can prevent something like this from ever happening in my life again. But when I accept the truth that this is no one's fault and no one could have done anything, I accept the fact that this was not predictable. It could not have been prevented. It could not have been stopped at any time. And therefore, I accept the fact that this, or a situation like this, a situation that will bring me to this level of despair, will inevitably happen again. And I won't be able to see it coming. I won't be able to prevent it. I won't be able to avoid it. And I won't be able to stop it. And the idea of going through something else, going through anything that even remotely makes me feel this way, is fucking terrifying. So to some extent, I am forgiving my family, even though they don't require my forgiveness. Like I said, they didn't do anything wrong. I'm still upset, and I think I have a right to be upset at this point. But this is where I am, and this is why I chose to move out. And all I can do is hope. All I can do is hope that sometime within the next month and a half, before I turn 26 and I lose my health insurance, I hope that I find a full-time benefited position that would allow me to afford a slightly better place than this. Right now, I'm with roommates, 2 people who I don't really know. And I would prefer to live by myself because honestly, I think I've earned that after 25 years of having to share a space with someone else and not really having my own space. But that's all I can do, is hope that something changes. So that's where I am. I don't know if anybody has any words of wisdom or insight or advice or words of comfort. I'll take anything at this point. And I hope that maybe somebody else in the world heals from this somehow. Just understanding, if for nothing else, that you're not alone. And that everybody goes through shit. I don't know. It's hardly the worst thing that's happening in the world right now. I mean, come on. We have people trying to cancel Pride Month and cops killing African Americans for no fucking reason. And people trying to say that only some Black Lives Matter and not all Black Lives Matter. Like, fuck off. There are way more important things in the world, and I know that. But I also can't pretend like I'm okay, because I'm not. Sorry, somebody keeps texting me. I guess I'll cut it there, because I really don't have anything else to talk about. I'll probably check in with you guys tomorrow if I have some fabulous new revelation or just need to talk. But I'm not going to do the whole sign-off spiel because honestly, this is just not the video to do it. So, thank you so much for watching.